So if you meditate for 4 hours a day, it will take you 10 years to reach enlightenment.
Right.
But if you decide to double it, like if you do 8 hours a day, it will take you 20 years.
Which is just wild to think about.
It really is. Welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. We are exploring a paradox that essentially breaks, well, the golden rule of modern productivity.
Yeah, it completely flips it on its head.
It does, because think about it. If you're trying to master a new professional skill or, bounce back from burnout or even just navigate the chaotic pace of life.
You want to go faster.
Exactly. You've almost certainly felt that burning urge to speed up your own progress. You look at where you are, you look at where you want to be, and you think, how can I get there faster?
We are deeply conditioned to look for that fast forward button. I mean, the assumption is always that more effort applied more aggressively just yields faster results.
Right. Input equals output. But today's source material looks at that exact impulse and tells us we have it entirely backward.
Entirely backward.
We are diving into a short, but honestly incredibly dense document titled 215 Don't Rush the Butterfly.docx. It features a story from Don Miguel Ruiz's 1997 book, The Four Agreements.
It's a classic.
It is. And the entire premise challenges our obsession with rushing our own development. Okay, let's unpack this.
So the document opens with that story you just mentioned at the top. There's this man who desperately wants to transcend his suffering.
He wants to reach a higher level of maturity, right?
Exactly. So he seeks out a Buddhist master, and he asks, Master, if I meditate 4 hours a day, how long will it take me to transcend?
And the master tells him it will take 10 years.
Right. But the man is eager. He wants to optimize the timeline.
Of course he does. We all would.
Right. So he asks what happens if he doubles the input, like meditating 8 hours a day instead of 4.
And that's where the master delivers that completely baffling punchline. He says, then it may take you 20 years.
It just completely subverts our expectations because it rejects the foundational logic of how we basically operate in the world.
It really does. And I want to pause on just how counterintuitive that is for you listening right now, because in almost every other area of human existence, putting in double the effort actually yields faster results.
Yeah, usually it does.
Like if you study for a professional certification for 8 hours instead of 4, you learn the material faster. Or if you run twice as many miles a week, your cardio improves faster.
Right, you get fitter.
We're taught from a very young age that input equals output. So the master's logic just feels broken. It feels like bad math.
Well, the math feels bad because we are applying the rules of mechanics and data accumulation to the rules of complex human development.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they're entirely different systems. You can't just map one onto the other.
The best way I can make sense of this is by thinking about baking. Like if you are making a cake, the recipe might say it takes 1 hour at 350 degrees.
Right, a standard recipe.
You cannot just crank the oven to 700 degrees and expect it to bake perfectly in 30 minutes.
Oh, you definitely cannot do that.
No. You don't get a faster cake. You get a completely burnt exterior with just a raw liquid center.
Because the chemistry of baking actually requires time for the reactions to occur. The heat is just a catalyst.
It's not the transformation itself.
Exactly. And if you force the catalyst, the heat becomes destructive. The source text makes this core assertion very clearly. Pushing too hard too fast when it comes to internal growth doesn't just slow us down.
It actively harms us.
Yes, it causes real damage.
I want to dig into the actual mechanism of that harm. Because with the cake, we understand that 700 degrees burns the sugar and ruins the leavening process.
Right.
But what is the psychological equivalent of that? Like, why does meditating for 8 hours or trying to speed run our emotional growth actually damage the process?
Well, think about what psychological or spiritual growth actually requires. It isn't just the accumulation of facts.
Not just memorizing things.
No, it is the fundamental restructuring of how you perceive reality. It requires profound cognitive and emotional integration.
Okay.
So when you try to force that integration, say, by meditating for 8 hours when your mind isn't prepared for it, you trigger a biological reaction.
Like reading 10 self-help books in a weekend to try and cure your grief after a breakup.
Exactly. You trigger the brain's stress response. You are flooding your system with cortisol. You are essentially putting yourself in a state of threat.
So you're putting your nervous system into overdrive.
Yes. And neurobiologically, when you are in a high-stress state, your prefrontal cortex is inhibited.
That's the part responsible for deep learning, right?
Deep learning, empathy, emotional regulation, all of it. You
Mhm.
cannot integrate new, complex, emotional paradigms when your brain thinks it's under attack by your own ambition.
Wow. Under attack by your own ambition.
Yeah. The sheer intensity of the forced effort creates psychological resistance. You end up fighting yourself, you exhaust your cognitive resources, and you avoid the actual lived experience you need to grow.
So you're applying 700 degrees of heat to a delicate neurological process.
That is exactly what you're doing.
Okay, so if cranking up the heat just burns the cake, what does that biological backfiring look like in nature? Because the text answers this with a pretty devastating metaphor.
It really is.
It says, if you force a pupa to break out of its cocoon before it's ready, you cripple the butterfly for life.
Crippling the butterfly for life, it's a striking image.
Yeah.
And it forces us to reckon with the violence of our own impatience.
Because when a caterpillar goes into a chrysalis, it doesn't just, sprout some wings.
No, it goes through a crazy process.
It literally digests itself. It turns into this biological goo, like a literal soup of cells before it reconstitutes into a butterfly.
Right.
So are we just terrified of sitting in the uncomfortable goo phase of our own transformation? Like we get so anxious in the messiness of the cocoon that we try to rip it open before our wings are actually formed.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that avoidance of the goo phase is arguably the defining anxiety of modern professional and personal life.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
The human equivalent of that biological soup is any period of profound liminality. It is the messy middle of a career pivot where your old skills don't quite apply, but your new skills aren't sharp yet.
Right, or like the prolonged, exhausting grief after a major life loss.
Exactly. Or the awkward phase of taking on a new leadership role where you just feel deeply incompetent. These phases are characterized by a total loss of form.
You don't know who you are in those moments. You're formless.
And being formless is terrifying. Our instinct is to escape that vulnerability immediately. We want to skip the confusion, bypass the formlessness, and just arrive at the polished, mature end state.
We want the fully winged version of ourselves right away.
Yes, we want the transformation without the dissolution.
But the text insists that human and spiritual maturity simply cannot be achieved by force. The Thorse actually describes maturity unfolding slowly, like wings drying in the sun after the long cocoon of transformation.
Such a beautiful way to put it.
It is, and in the biological reality of the butterfly, the struggle to push its way out of the tight, restrictive cocoon isn't just a hurdle.
No, it was necessary.
The physical resistance of the cocoon is what literally forces the fluid, the hemolymph from the butterfly's swollen body into its shriveled wings.
The struggle is the mechanism for flight.
Wait, really? So the restriction itself is what makes the wings functional?
Yes.
So by cutting the cocoon open to help it, to optimize its exit, you're literally removing its biological ability to fly later.
Exactly. It emerges, but its body is swollen, its wings are stunted, and it will be grounded forever.
Oh, wow. And when we apply that to human development, the parallels are pretty uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable.
Phew.
Every time we demand, we have all the answers right now. Every time we refuse to sit with our own uncertainty, we are essentially taking a scalpel to our own cocoon.
Like trying to hack our way through complex emotional growth.
Right. We might emerge faster, and we might look like we've moved on to the next phase, but we haven't built the emotional or spiritual musculature to actually handle it. We cripple our own capacity to navigate the new reality we rush to reach.
That is so heavy. But if rushing the process is literally self-destructive, why is our entire culture built around doing exactly that?
Well, we love data.
We really do. We track our sleep cycles, we measure our meditation streaks on apps, we try to life hack our way to enlightenment. And that brings us to the text critique of how we fundamentally view ourselves.
This part is crucial.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The discussion anchors on a single defining quote. It says, "We are not machines to be optimized. We are souls unfolding."
That sentence is a direct indictment of the modern ethos. We have basically taken the logic of the industrial assembly line and now the logic of the algorithm and mapped it onto the human spirit.
Yeah, and the text uses examples of this imbalance that highlight the irony of our optimization obsession. Like, it points out that spending endless time on social media distracts us from real connections.
Which is pretty universally accepted.
Right, we all recognize that doom scrolling is a net negative. But then it warns that spending long hours in religious practice while neglecting your relationships can also delay your spiritual growth.
The juxtaposition there is key, because we tend to think of optimization as a neutral or even universally positive tool.
Yeah, we assume that if a pursuit is categorized as good or healthy, like meditation or therapy or upskilling,
Then maximizing it must be better.
exactly, we turn inner peace into a high score. We think, well, if an hour of journaling is good, then 4 hours of journaling must make me incredibly self-aware.
What's fascinating here is how the source defines the trap of imbalance. When you treat yourself like a machine, you focus entirely on maximizing the input to get maximum output.
But a machine doesn't have a nervous system.
No, it doesn't. A machine doesn't have complex, contradictory relationships to nurture. A machine processes data. It doesn't experience reality.
And the text points out that what we are actually seeking through all this effort are things like real connections and inner peace. But those states of being are fundamentally incompatible with the mechanics of optimization.
You cannot hack a real connection.
You cannot A/B test vulnerability.
No, you really can't. They require a kind of inefficiency. They require presence, unstructured time, and a willingness to be affected by things completely outside your control.
So when the man in the opening story wanted to meditate for 8 hours to speed up his enlightenment, he was treating his mind like a hard drive.
Like he could just upload data into it faster.
Right. And the master was warning him that treating yourself like a machine disconnects you from the very soul you are trying to unfold.
Exactly. If you spend your entire life in a room optimizing your theoretical empathy by reading textbooks, but you ignore the friends who are actively reaching out to you in the real world, you aren't growing.
You are just optimizing a data stream.
Right. You are neglecting the outer responsibilities that actually test, solidify, and authenticate your inner growth.
The human soul operates on biological, seasonal time. It unfolds. And as anyone who has ever tried to force a flower bud open knows, you just cannot rush an unfolding without tearing the petals.
It's impossible.
But I have to push back on this framework a bit, because I hear phrases like unfolding slowly and seasonal time, and frankly, it sounds a little bit like a convenient excuse for stagnation.
That is a very valid concern.
Because in a world where you can lose your job if you don't upskill fast enough, or where real problems require urgent action, isn't there a massive risk that we just act lazy and disguise it as patience?
It is the most common fear associated with this philosophy. The fear that if we step off the optimization treadmill, we'll just stop moving entirely.
The fear of apathy masquerading as zen?
Precisely.
Because if we reject the machine optimization model, if we admit we can't slice open the cocoon without ruining the butterfly, how do we actually navigate a Tuesday afternoon where we have deadlines, goals, and very real pressures?
We still have to get things done.
Exactly. This text material offers an alternative to optimization, which it calls attentive living, moving through life with balance and grace, honoring both our inner journey and our outer responsibilities.
Attentive living is the bridge between the inner reality of the soul and the external demands of the world. And to address your concern about laziness, the text is explicit. Attentive living is not passive.
I was trying to conceptualize this, and the best analogy I could find for attentive living is surfing.
Surfing, okay, I like that.
Yeah, if you're a surfer, you are deeply aware that you cannot force the ocean to give you a wave. You cannot scream at the water to speed up the tides or optimize the swell.
You have to submit to the ocean's timing.
But, and this is the critical distinction, you cannot just do nothing.
You still have to swim out past the break.
You have to paddle out, you have to read the surface of the water, understand the wind, position yourself correctly. It requires immense focus, physical conditioning, and vigilance.
Right, you're highly active.
And when that wave finally starts to swell, you have to actively, aggressively paddle to match its speed and catch it at the exact right moment. If you just lay passively on your board, claiming you are letting the ocean unfold,
The wave simply rolls right under you, and you miss the opportunity.
exactly.
This raises an important question about agency, and your surfing analogy captures the source's stance perfectly. The text does not advocate for apathy.
It definitely doesn't.
It explicitly says we must honor our outer responsibilities. We have to paddle, we have to show up for the work, practice the skills, and engage with our relationships.
But we do it attentively.
Right. The text defines this state as neither rushing ahead nor falling behind. It is about participation without domination.
Participation without domination. That's a great phrase. You participate fiercely in the act of surfing, but you do not try to dominate the ocean.
Right. You paddle for the wave, but you don't try to manufacture it.
So when you operate with participation without domination, the text says we allow each season to do its quiet work in us. And this requires a high level of self-awareness.
To recognize which season you are actually in, yeah.
Summer has its work of rapid growth and harvest, but winter has its work too.
It really does. The dormant periods, the times when you feel stuck, the terrifying goo phase inside the cocoon, that is when the quiet, invisible work of structural reorganization is taking place.
So if you panic during the winter because you think you are falling behind your peers,
And you try to force a summer harvest out of frozen ground,
you exhaust all your resources for absolutely no yield, you just damage the soil.
it requires trusting the utility of the season you are in. If you are in a season of learning a complex new skill and you are currently terrible at it, you have to allow yourself to just be terrible at it for a while.
You cannot life hack your way past the incompetence phase.
No, you can't. You have to put in your hour of practice today, attentively, and then let it rest. You meditate for the 4 hours, and you accept that the 10 years will take 10 years.
Because the 10 years are going to pass regardless of what you do. The only variable you control is whether you arrive at the end of that decade as a fully formed butterfly.
Or as someone who constantly tore open their own cocoon in a panic.
And now lacks the capacity to fly.
It is a fundamental shift from measuring our lives by velocity to measuring our lives by capacity. The optimization mindset only cares about how fast you are moving.
But the attentive living mindset cares about what you are capable of holding once you arrive.
Precisely.
So what does this all mean? If we zoom out and look at the whole picture we've painted today based on this document,
The takeaways are profound.
they really are, but they demand a radical change in how we treat ourselves on a daily basis. First, we have to recognize the biological and psychological reality that effort does not always equal speed.
Right. Clanking up the heat just burns the cake.
And doubling your frantic hustle often triggers the exact stress responses that prevent deep integration and growth.
We have to stop violently forcing our own development.
Second, we have to reject the premise that we are machines. Trying to optimize every waking second of our lives for maximum output is a fundamental misunderstanding of what a human being actually is.
We are souls unfolding.
And things like inner peace, emotional maturity, and deep connection, they require the slow, inefficient rhythms of seasonal time.
And finally, we replace optimization with attentive living.
We practice participation without domination. We paddle for the wave, we honor our outer responsibilities, but we stop trying to control the ocean.
Well said.
The text closes with 4 direct commands. And I want to give these to you right now as you figure out how to navigate whatever season of life or work you find yourself in today. The commands are simple.
They are.
Trust the process. Find your rhythm. Take your time. Don't rush the butterfly.
Before we finish, I want to leave you with one final thought that builds on that central biological metaphor.
Go for it.
We've explored the very real danger of forcing the pupa out of its cocoon before it is ready. We know that removing the resistance cripples the butterfly.
Right.
But consider the biological origin of the cocoon itself. A cocoon is not a trap imposed on the caterpillar from the outside world. It isn't a cage that some external force locks it inside.
No, it's not.
The cocoon is spun from the inside. The caterpillar produces the silk from its own
It
body.
builds its own enclosure.
Exactly. So when you feel stuck in a dark, restrictive place in your own life, when you are the messy middle of a transition, feeling completely formless,
Yeah.
and you're desperate to break out and just feel competent again,
Yeah.
what if that restriction isn't a prison holding you back? What if it is a protective boundary that you, on some deep, intuitive level, unconsciously spun for yourself?
Oh, wow.
What if that exact frustrating restriction is the precise environment you need to survive your current season of transformation?
Just something to mull over as you find your own rhythm today.